The scuffed brown shoes caught his attention first, not because they were worn, but because of the way she kept trying to hide them under the cafe table. Maya wrapped her ankles around the chair legs, her cheeks flushing as she noticed David glancing downward. It was their first date, arranged through a mutual friend who swore they were absolutely perfect for each other. She'd agonized over every detail that morning: the simple blue dress from the thrift store, carefully pressed, her grandmother's delicate silver necklace, the way she'd styled her hair 3 different times before settling on loose waves. Everything had to be just right. Everything except the shoes. "I'm sorry about these," she blurted out, the words tumbling faster than she could stop them. Her hand gestured vaguely toward her feet, and she couldn't meet his eyes. "I know they're old and probably not what you expected. I meant to get new ones, but there was this situation at work, and I had to help cover someone's shift, and the money I'd saved just went to—" She stopped herself, mortified. Why was she explaining her financial situation to a stranger? "I'm sorry. I'm rambling." David set down his coffee cup slowly, his expression unreadable. Maya braced herself for the polite excuse, the sudden emergency he'd need to attend to, the way this promising afternoon would dissolve into another lonely evening and a story she'd replay in her head for weeks, analyzing every humiliating detail. Instead, he smiled, not the pitying smile she'd learned to recognize, but something genuine that reached his eyes. "Don't apologize for those shoes," he said quietly. "They walked you into my life." The words hung in the air between them, so unexpected that Maya forgot to breathe for a moment. She looked up, searching his face for sarcasm or mockery, but found only sincerity. "Tell me about them," David continued, leaning forward. "What did they walk you through?" And so she did. Hesitantly at first, then with growing ease, Maya told him about the shoes she'd bought 2 years ago when she'd moved to the city from rural Pennsylvania, leaving behind the only home she'd ever known. They'd carried her through job interviews and rejections, through the first terrifying weeks of teaching at an underfunded elementary school in one of the city's most challenging neighborhoods. They'd walked miles when she couldn't afford the subway, clicked against hospital floors during her mother's cancer treatments, and stood firm on the playground where she broke up fights and wiped away tears that weren't her own. "Last week," she said, her voice softer now, "a student told me her family was being evicted. She's 8 years old, and she was trying to figure out how to keep her little brother warm when they had to sleep in their car. The shoes I'd been saving for. They didn't seem important anymore. So I gave her mother the money instead." David was quiet for a long moment, his coffee forgotten. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "My mother wore the same pair of shoes for 5 years when I was growing up. She was a nurse, on her feet 12-hour shifts, and those shoes were falling apart. But every time she had a little extra money, it went to making sure my sister and I had what we needed: school supplies, decent clothes, opportunities she never had. I used to be embarrassed by those worn-out shoes when she'd pick me up from school. I was too young and stupid to understand that those shoes represented the most profound kind of love." He reached across the table, and Maya found her hand in his. "She'd passed away 3 years ago, and I'd give anything to see those shoes one more time, to tell her I understood, to thank her for every sacrifice she made." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "So when I see your shoes, Maya, I don't see something to apologize for. I see someone who understands what really matters. I see someone who shows up, who keeps walking even when it's hard, who puts others first. Those are the most beautiful shoes I've ever seen." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but they were the good kind, the kind that came from being seen, truly seen, for the first time in longer than she could remember. The cafe bustled around them with the Monday afternoon crowd, but in that moment, it felt like they were the only 2 people in the world. The afternoon stretched into evening. They talked about everything and nothing: childhoods and dreams, failures and small triumphs, the books that changed them and the moments that broke them. David told her about his work at a nonprofit helping formerly incarcerated people find employment, about the uphill battles and the small victories that made it worthwhile. Maya shared stories about her students, about the resilience of children who had every reason to give up but kept showing up with hope in their eyes. When they finally left the cafe, the sun was setting, painting the city streets in shades of amber and gold. David insisted on walking Maya to the subway, and as they strolled through the cooling evening air, he stopped suddenly in front of a shoe store. "Would you let me buy you new shoes?" he asked, And before Maya could protest, he continued quickly, not because there's anything wrong with yours. Not because I pity you or think you can't manage on your own. But because everyone deserves to have someone look out for them sometimes. Because you spend your life taking care of everyone else, and maybe, just maybe, you could let someone take care of you for once. Maya felt the familiar urge to refuse, to insist she was fine, to maintain the independence she'd worn like armor for so long. But something in David's expression stopped her, the vulnerability there, the unspoken plea that said this wasn't just about shoes at all. It was about allowing connection, accepting kindness, letting someone close enough to matter. Okay, she whispered. Inside the store, as Maya tried on pair after pair, she caught David's reflection in the mirror. He wasn't just going through the motions, he was invested, genuinely caring about her comfort, asking questions about support and durability for standing all day. When she finally chose a pair, practical but pretty, exactly what she would have picked for herself, he also quietly asked the salesperson to box up her old shoes. Why? Maya asked as they left the store, her new shoes feeling strange and wonderful on her feet, the old ones carefully wrapped in the bag David carried. Because they're part of your story, he said simply. They're part of what brought us here. They matter. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in early spring, Maya unlocked the door to David's apartment using the key he'd given her the week before, a small gesture that meant everything. She was smiling, thinking about the surprise she had planned, when she noticed something on his bookshelf that made her stop in her tracks. There, in a small shadow box frame, were her old brown shoes. Beneath them, on a small brass plaque, were the words, "They walked you into my life, first date, September 23rd. Maya stood there crying happy tears when David emerged from the bedroom, grinning. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder as they both looked at the framed shoes. You kept them, she said, her voice breaking. Of course I did. They're the most important shoes in the world. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her arms. They carried someone extraordinary through all the hard moments. That made her who she is. They brought her to a cafe on an ordinary Monday and turned my entire life into something beautiful. Those shoes walked you through everything that mattered until they walked you to me. Maya kissed him then, tasting salt from her own tears, feeling the solid warmth of him, the absolute rightness of this moment. Outside, the city moved on with its endless hurry, but here in this quiet apartment, two people who understood the value of worn shoes and selfless love had found exactly what they'd been walking toward all along. Sometimes the things we're most ashamed of become the very things that lead us home.